Y'all do know that this movie is actually about Steven Spielberg's life. This movie is basically an autobiography or a biopic of Steven Spielberg. I finally have a chance to talk about one of my favorite directors of all time, Steven Spielberg. And to give you all some context before I start on this review. So I saw I'll put it up here, his biopic. I'm a big Steven Spielberg fan, so I watched it. This kind of feels like a prelude. It gives you some more context of what's happening. And so basically, he felt a way whenever his parents got divorced. And he always blamed his father. That's why we always saw those movies. We always saw his earlier works. They weren't the best father figures that were portrayed. Mainly because he had a lot of resentment towards his dad. Because for all these years, he thought it was his dad who did divorce. But now seeing this, that's what he's finally realizing that. And Fabelmans, it's easier whenever it's called the Fabelmans, so you can put yourself in his shoes. And a young Steven Spielberg played by Mateo. Honestly, I don't know how I spelled it right, but here it goes right here. The joy and enlightenment in his eyes capture the wonderment of him experiencing film for the first time is seen through his eyes. The fact that Steven Spielberg was able to capture that on film and somehow emit that joy when we first started watching movies for the first time, or our first experience watching something that was beyond our capability of understanding, and the sense of wonderment when we find our calling, I guess. The wonderment we get and the intrigue on how this thing that has captured our imagination, he captured that with the young boy, Mateo. Him filming from a very young age started in this movie. His favorite movie, and it's crazy enough, I know, it's Nights of Saudi Arabia or something like that. I'll put it here. When you're watching this film, it reminds me of like a lot of his older films. Like you'll see like little nods or tidbits of movies that he made in his earlier work that he's kind of touching upon in this. And the great thing about this film is that it never feels self-indulgent on Steven Spielberg's side. And it always pertains to the coming of age story. Whether that's Steven Spielberg or whether it's you connecting to this film, or the way you felt the first time when you experienced your first love, your first bullies, your first moment where you had to grow up. Whether you wanted to admit it or not, that is the feeling that this film gives you. It's one of my favorite coming of age movies. I've been falling out of touch with coming of age movies or shows or stories. This kind of just felt a little more personal, and maybe that's why I was so receptive to it. Getting able to see what Steven Spielberg felt, and knowing that I or others, if you're watching this, that it comes. It's better to embrace it. Gabriel LaBelle, him playing as a young Steven as he grows a little older, he has a sense of maturity, but he also has that sense of frailty. He's a little more sensitive than the other kids. That there's this, I wouldn't say weakness, it's more like there's this disconnection whenever he's with the other people. And I wonder if Steven Spielberg felt that. And going to the big speech that Judd Hugh, the speech about being an artist and what it takes and how much it takes from you and your loved ones if you're not doing it. I think every artist needs to watch that scene at least to understand that it's not going to go away, that it's just a part of you. You need to release it. You need to embrace it because it's never going to go away. The way he holds the camera, and before I even start on that, this is some of my favorite shots used in a film all year. He's just a master craftsman with the camera. What he wants you to feel, he'll do it with the camera. He has such intimacy with the camera. And this is his least big budget, awe-inspiring type of films. And even like with Steven Spielberg using the camera and just operating it like a master craftsman. Even the actors having to portray their roles here was great. Even Seth Rogen does a really good job as the uncle. Michelle Williams and Paul Dano really, especially Michelle Williams, she captures the duality of being a mother and being an actual person, and how it affects the relationships around her, from her kids to her husband, Paul Dano, and Paul Dano being kind of very callous and cold and just looking at statistics and not embracing his kid's gift. Because at that age, it's very, very hard for someone that's very artistic. It's not always easy getting that validation at a young age, because it could get swept. It can go bad. And the fact that he got that from his father eventually, and his mother being so adamant about it. But the one scene, the camp scene, was so touching. Like, it wasn't a lot that was happening, but you could feel the moment and intensity. This is the moment that the film changes on its head. It gets deeper than what it should be, especially for a young Steven Spielberg, because that's what I'm going to call him through this whole entire film, because it's basically an inspiration of his own life. And Michelle Williams, the scene where she dances with, just, it's so simple, but the way it's shot, the way it's done, the way the lights are set up, it emulates the way the lights are set up behind her and the way she dances in front of the camera is it's never too sexual. It feels intimate. Like, the camera is just focused on her and everybody being receptive to her, being very reactionary. And the way Steven Spielberg puts his reels together, the way he puts his film, and the way he incorporates music, a lot of what I do basically with the reels, with the comic books, is what I do. What he was doing with the music and the film side of it is what I do with TikTok. I could connect because I do that, and the reason why I do that on TikTok is basically the same feeling he gets. It's just, I feel like I need to tell a story. I know it's not my story eventually, it will be my story eventually, but that was a viral moment for me, because I knew that it wasn't bullshit what I do. Like, it felt very validating that Steven Spielberg and I do stuff like that, and just to bring the scene together. And this kind of actually motivated me or inspired me again to start going a little harder on those. Maybe one day I'll make a film on here. Yeah, you never know where it will go, but in the meantime, I really related to that what Steven Spielberg did, or the young Steven Spielberg. And you fellow content creators that are watching, I know you'll get the same feeling. I really am adamant about this film. Like, this is one of Steven Spielberg's best films in a very long time that I've enjoyed personally. And it's probably one of my favorite films I've seen this year. Yes, this knocked out a couple from my top 3 movies. We'll see, it might be number 1. We'll wait till the end. I haven't been in love with a Steven Spielberg movie in a very, very long time. And the toll it takes to be an artist, but the joys that come with it. Him grabbing that essence and delivering it to us in this film is awe-inspiring. And I want to tell y'all more, but I don't want to spoil the film either. This is a great biopic, a great film in general. I'm gonna have to give this, I want to give it a 10 out of 10. Okay, there was one gripe I had. One gripe. There was a supernatural thing that happens, like about halfway through the film. There's a little that didn't make sense to the overall film. They didn't foretell this beforehand. It just happened, and I think they just did that because they needed that part in the film, which this is the only part I can have a gripe and a serious, but I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I could overlook it. But the speech with the uncle, that was another great scene as well, and really solidified people who are like me, who are artists, can truly understand. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10, guys. I might give it a 10 at the end of this, but I will rework my top 10 movies. Yeah, I'm definitely getting on Blu-ray, 4K. Amazing movie. Please, please, please go out and watch it. You will not be disappointed if you love these type of films. If it's in your town, it just hit mine, I'm all there for it. Deuces, y'all. Y'all have a good one. Happy holidays.